And I think that is one of the most key things in manifestation as a process, or spirituality as a process, or just life, right? Having this belief that there is a higher power,
Yeah.
that there is a higher power that is looking out for you, that is watching out for you. And that is how you can surrender, only when you know there's something bigger than you. Every time I got $1 for when I was called an overthinker, I would be a millionaire by now, and I wouldn't have had to start passive income streams like this one.
But trust us, we're not overthinking girlies. In fact, I reckon others are perhaps just not thinking enough.
But don't worry, we've got you covered, because we're here to think on your behalf on all the things that matter to you and to us, with the girls who overthink.
With Girls Who Think,
the podcast.
All right, listeners, welcome back to the Girls Who Think pod. I'm Niharika.
And I'm Simran.
And today we're discussing a super interesting topic, one that we both have a lot of tea to spill on, which is manifestation. Is it a real thing or is it just woo-woo? What is your take, Simran?
Well, I think it's pretty real, but I also think it's a bit woo-woo. I think it has both the elements. There are woo-woo things to manifestation, but I think it's absolutely real. So of course, right, manifestation is science-backed. I think most of us now know that neuroplasticity is real, right? So if you're visualizing something or you're repeating something to yourself, right, if you're practicing affirmations, that kind of stuff does rewire your brain. You can rewire your brain, as in build new neural pathways and reinvent yourself. Basically, there is scope to reinvent yourself in this human experience. So manifestation is very much real from that point of view. But I think there are woo-woo elements to manifestation, because when we talk about the manifestation rituals and processes, I think everybody has some different sort of process. Some people have processes that I believe are more standard and structural and like science-backed, like maybe say affirmations and journaling. I also believe in like meditation and the spiritual element of it. So I think it's a blend of both.
Yeah, I actually have to agree. I know that this has become a popular dialogue after the book The Secret that came out.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this.
It's really come into pop culture very recently.
It's really come into pop culture recently. But when
Yeah.
I read The Secret, I was in school and I remember thinking that it was an experience that I already used to have. Like, the moment that I would think extremely strongly that something's going to happen and I would see it happen in front of me and I would think that I have these magical powers as a child in school. And then when I read The Secret, it made sense that is what it propagates, that is what happens in this process of manifestation.
There's a process to it. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that's what happens, right? Like you mentioned, when you read The Secret, you understood. And I think for me also, when I learned what manifestation is, I realized that everything up to this point in my life, I had manifested. I think I manifested things when I was a kid before knowing that I was manifesting. That's the fun part.
That is the fun part. And again, even if I look at the things that I have done in my life, good or bad, the good things or the bad things that have happened to me in my life, they're all things that I had a deep conviction is going to happen. And that conviction really sets the manifestation in motion. And
absolutely. I think that's the most important part of manifestation, the belief, right? That's the most important step in the process.
Yeah. And I actually feel like whether I read management books or whether I read books on manifestation or whether I read books on self-love even, a lot of them actually have very similar processes. I mean, if you're on the more practical side of things, you might call it strategy, or you might call it
process.
Like
process-oriented.
It's more process-oriented. But if you're on the more woo-woo side of things, you might call it manifestation, you might call it rituals or whatever. But these are all definitely, a lot of them are things that work. A lot of them are things that have been scientifically researched upon. And I feel like they're, at the end of the day, really powerful tools, a lot of them. And we will dive into a couple of them here. But I would love to know, what are the most used practices by you for actually being conscious about your manifestations or being intentional about your manifestations?
I think for me, I started to get intentional about my manifestations about 2 years ago. Before that, it was not that intentional, but the process, I believe, was the same. And if I have to break down the process, for me, step one is to get clear. And I think that again is such a difficult task because we want so many things. But to be clear that, hey, this is what I want, this is my desire, and I focus on it, and I remove all distractions from anything that's blocking me from that desire. I think setting that clear goal and clear desire is very important. And a lot of manifestation coaches also talk about accepting your desires. I think a lot of people, when we attach some stigma to certain desire, we're not able to manifest it. For example, money. A lot of us have grown up thinking, I mean, the conditioning around money was that, money is bad, it's not good, because, mostly people who have money are
Evil.
bad, evil. And I think that
Yeah.
also comes from the conditioning during that time, the pop culture and cinema during that time. The rich man was always the villain somehow, right?
Yeah.
The poor chap was always the struggling,
good boy,
hero,
the
the good
hero.
boy. So we take those messages and, we associate certain bad attributes to certain things, which become hard for us to manifest.
Yeah.
So I think getting clear and accepting your desire is so
Yeah.
important. And then for me, step two is often de-pedestalizing your desire. Now
Yeah.
you know this is your desire, but bring it into your plane of existence. Do not put it on a pedestal. Don't think like it is above you and you're not there yet.
Yeah.
I think here I would want to talk about the release of my debut novel. Until the time that I thought that, I cannot do this, or who am I to be an author? Until I had this mindset that I don't have any business publishing a book, I was not able to manifest it. I faced rejections from publishers, and there were creative differences. Something or the other would happen and the whole thing would just fall off.
Yeah.
But the day you decide that I deserve this,
Yeah.
I deserve to be this person, things start shaping up.
So interesting, because I feel like I had a very similar experience with writing my novel as well. It was just one of those things that I always knew I'm going to do. It actually happened to me almost like a midlife crisis. I mean, like a quarter life crisis. It was a month before my 30th birthday where I was like, listen, I mean, I thought that by this point I would have already had this. And so by just like a nudge of being like, how do I not have this already? Like, it's obviously supposed to be something that I do. It was so part of my self-identity, I think.
When it
The
becomes
way
so
that I saw
obvious,
myself.
I love the word that you've
Exactly.
used, because it has to be obvious to you.
It has to be obvious. And if I look at like my life and all the things that I have, including the kind of relationships that I have with people, including the things that I'm doing, these are all things that I always felt like are the most normal, the most obvious for me. None of them are things that I put on a pedestal. The things that I put on a pedestal,
They never
there is
happen.
always a chaser relationship
Yeah.
that I end up manifesting with it, And so deep pedestalizing my
Your
goal or
desire.
my intention or my desire is something that I have now established that, I mean, that is just a given in the manifestation
It's a
process.
no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
And I think it's the hardest also to
Yes.
achieve, because here, again, you have to change internally as a person. You
Yeah.
need to develop that sense of self-worth. That, hey, I am worthy of this. I am deserving. I remember there was a phase in my life where I literally put this little post-it on my bathroom mirror that I'm worthy and I'm deserving. And I would like literally brush my teeth and I would look at it. I'm worthy, I'm deserving. I would do my skincare. I would go to bed. Before that, I would read, I'm worthy, I'm deserving. And that's where neuroplasticity comes in, right? I repeat it to myself so many times until there's a new neural pathway in my brain that, the self-doubt neural pathway is gone and the worthiness and believing energy is back. So I think that's very important. Only when you're able to change that internal makeup of yourself is when you can really believe in it, and you're able to take aligned action, which is the third step, right? I can take aligned action towards my goals only when I think I'm deserving of it, right? If I think I can start a company today, only then I will actually go and get the GST number, right? If I will constantly keep doubting myself, I will never be able to have the guts to go start a company, right? Get the product out, get the legal thing done. So I think just that self-belief is so important for you to take aligned action, which is step number 3. And here I also want to talk about aligned action in the material plane, the world that we live in. So from a spiritual lens, the material plane, the matter plane that we live in is just denser, right? Because moving matter is very difficult. moving matter needs a lot of force, it needs a lot of energy. So that is why aligned action takes a lot of time and a lot of energy in this plane. But when you talk about, say, the astral plane, which is a spiritual plane, it's less matter, it's less dense, it's more spirit. In a spirit heavy plane, things are willed into existence by mere thoughts. And I think that's why in the matter plane also it starts with thoughts, but it needs a lot of aligned action. And before a lot of people come at me at the whole woo woo thing of what's an astral plane and what's these random planes of existence, I think not a lot of people realize that from a scientific lens, humans can only perceive a very narrow range of frequencies, right? That we can hear or see. But there's a lot of frequencies beyond that perceivable range that are still there. So we cannot perceive a lot that's going on in the universe, right? Which is why the universe is a mystery to most of us. And science can also explore it to a certain point. Beyond that, science cannot explore this universe either. And I think that's where people who practice meditation, who practice, say, occult sciences, are able to get to these heightened states of consciousness and experience frequencies, experience things that you can't in a normal human setting. And I think when you experience those altered states of consciousness, you're able to realize how the manifestation process works also, from a more spiritual lens, which is why manifestation is linked to meditation also so much. Because once you start meditating, you become a more powerful human being, right? You become more mentally sound and strong. From a scientific lens, your brain chemistry changes, right? Your left hemisphere and your right hemisphere become a little more coherent. There's this one person called Dr. Joe Dispenza. He is very popular in this space, and he talks about the science behind manifestation, how your brain chemistry changes. And there's this book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, which really dives deep into this stuff. And I think it's just so juicy. If anybody is interested in the whole self-improvement and manifestation genre, I think that's one of the best books to begin with.
Ooh, love that.
Yeah.
But what have been your biggest experiences with manifestation? Is there something you've manifested for yourself that you didn't think was possible?
I think so many things. I think almost everything, anything and everything worth having that I have in my life has been a result of conscious or unconscious manifestation. I think, for example, even releasing my debut novel, I remember was such a moment straight out of my vision board. I remember when I was revealing the cover and, there was everybody, my friends and my family, and they saw the cover of my book for the first time. I remember visualizing that particular setting maybe like 5 years before, right? When I was in college, I used to imagine that one day I'm going to have my book launch and, my friends and family would be sitting and I would have done this thing. And again, how it ties back to manifestation is I always knew, I think when I was in school, I kind of knew I was going to write.
Yeah.
I kind of knew I was going to have a book. For some reason, I just knew it. I used to not even write at that point. I think I actively began writing and enjoying writing when I was in college. But even then, I thought I can never write a book, but I knew I was going to write a book.
Exactly.
That's the whole contradiction in manifestation, where when the desire and the manifestation of the desire is a little far from you, you think that you can't do it, but then you have this deep knowing that it will happen whenever it happens. And I think here's where I want to talk about timing in manifestation, because a lot of us get hooked up on timing, that hey, it's not happened yet, and we get impatient. But it's so important to realize the importance of divine timing. Things will happen to you when you're ready and when the timing is right for you. It's so important to kind of surrender. Surrender is such an important part of manifestation because all of us are worried about timing. It's so important to realize that things happen when they have to happen.
Yeah, but the thing about divine timing that I find super interesting in the realm of manifestation particularly is that, we're talking about de-pedestalizing a goal or a desire, right? The moment that you de-pedestalize it, or the moment that it is the most normal thing for you to have abundance in any one sphere, you won't really be looking for timing. The fact that you're looking for timing still means that you're in that starvation mentality, wherein that you're in a space of void of this thing, and therefore you're also not attracting it. among the people that I know, whether or not they consciously think they're manifesting or not, like I have seen them attract things so effortlessly when they have let go of the process, is because they are not really in that chasing mentality anymore.
Yeah.
By default becomes divine timing,
Yeah.
because at that point you don't care anymore. Like you have made your life complete, or you have kind of let go of that desperation around that particular desire.
Yeah.
You're not really looking for it, because the fact that you're sitting there watching the oven timer, to go off on for your desire to come out all baked,
Yeah.
right? Like that still means that okay, you're in starvation. You don't have it yet.
Yeah, you're in lack
You're in
mindset.
a lack mindset.
And the thing about lack mindset that you just mentioned, I think is so important, and it's been so hard for me to get out of, because that's been my nature to always focus on what I don't have. I could have 10 things, but there's this one thing I don't have, and I will be obsessed with that one thing instead of
Yeah.
focusing on the 10 things that I do have, or
Yeah.
I have manifested, I have created for myself. Which is why I believe in gratitude journaling a lot. And I think, again, it's so scientific that when you start focusing on the things that you have, it triggers this feeling inside of you. It triggers this feeling of happiness,
Yeah.
joy, and abundance. And again, from a scientific point of view, emotions also have a frequency associated to them. So the feelings of joy and abundance and happiness are higher frequency emotions, while the feelings of jealousy and sadness and anger are lower frequency emotions. Love, for example, is one of the highest frequency emotions that you can experience. So I think the whole process of manifestation kind of comes down to tuning yourself to a higher frequency emotion. I believe everyone has like a standard range of emotions that they experience on a daily basis, and that falls in a certain range. So manifesting a better life, a better goal, often comes down to you tuning to that frequency. It's literally like that radio frequency tuning, right? If I want to hear this sound, I'm going to have to tune myself to it. So that's essentially the process. But speaking of process and speaking of tools and techniques, Niharika, what are your tools and techniques that you've used consciously or unconsciously to manifest, and what's your process been like?
I feel like one standard process that's actually always been there with me, even way before I understood the subject, was what now is being called the lucky girl syndrome,
Whoa, the TikTok
Especially,
trend.
it's now the TikTok trend. I feel like I
Yeah.
have done it since I was a child subconsciously. Like, when you're talking about goals which you think are too big for you,
Yeah.
and which you kind of feel like they're just too unattainable, when it comes to things like that, I leave the goal be, and I just kind of hone in on the feeling of being like, but I'm the luckiest girl in the world. Like,
Yeah,
obviously,
I'm the
God's on
luckiest
my
girl
side,
alive.
and
Yeah.
because my belief in that is so strong, I feel like once I let go, I just need to be able to let go by kind of leaning in on this belief, which I already always have within me, and whether it's my trust in kind of God being on my side at all times, or whether it is about just me knowing that I'm divinely loved and I'll always be protected, and I have that belief which is so integral to me, it's so strong in me, that is unshakable. Like, regardless of external situations, that is unshakable. I mean, to the point where it used to be even to the smallest of things. Like, I would walk out and I would, not carry my bag with me. And if I needed a hairpin, my sister or my cousin or my friend or whoever was with me, like, how do you just do this? Like, you don't even have something as small
You
as like
trust
a
the
rubber band
universe.
with you or something. And I'm like, but I know it'll be there somewhere. And I will just rummage in my pockets of some random pants that I'm wearing, and I will find what I'm looking for. If
Wow.
it's money, or if it's a rubber band, or if it's any random thing, I just know
The
it'll be figured
belief
out.
that you'll be protected,
Yeah, so
that you're
I
taken care
just
of.
lean on the universe like that, and I do it I do
Yeah.
it consciously. Yeah, like I just
Wow.
know I will be looked after.
That's
So
incredible.
yeah, and that belief, I think, really carries me through the big goals that I feel like are too unattainable. I mean, all I need to do is kind of look the other way and look inward and kind of just rely on that belief of mine, and things automatically get taken care of. So
Yeah.
that's number one. I feel like that overrides the
Everything else.
challenges that may come up otherwise. So that's number one. But I also absolutely love gratitude journaling. Is something that I have also done, and usually I find that when I'm in my lows, and the thing about people being in their lows is that, it takes one thing for you to come into that lower frequency vibration, and once you're in there, suddenly you will just magnify everything that's sad about your life, right?
Yeah,
And
it's a loop.
it's a
It's a
loop.
very bad
It's
loop.
a very bad loop, and it's moments like that that really make you they take you to a really dark place within yourself, and it could be something which is very transient that's actually happened. It would be very fleeting otherwise, but because now it has put you into that lower vibrational frequency, you're suddenly magnifying everything sad that's happened in your life. Everything's terrible.
What you focus on grows,
What you
right?
focus
If you
on grows. You're
focus
feeding the darkness inside
on
of you.
failures and on the
Exactly.
negative bit, it'll grow, it'll amplify.
And when you're feeding the darkness inside of you, that just grows to such a degree. I mean, that was something that I wrote about with my character also. And I was very sure I did not want to talk about a character that is going through chronic depression. You don't have to be going through chronic depression to have moments like that in life, for sure. And I wanted to talk about how this can be such a human experience, but it takes your own tools or work or
Yeah.
therapy or whatever your own process is for you to pull yourself out of it, because otherwise, you will keep magnifying it. So gratitude journaling is something that has really helped me as well. It helps me tremendously pull me out of that darkness and kind of see
Yeah.
the wonderful things that are also coexisting, and that's very hard to see in moments like that. So another activity that I definitely do is called SATs, which is state akin to sleep, which is basically that period just before you fall asleep, right? Where you're lucid, but not really just enough. And, at that time, your mind is extremely suggestible. So, whatever you feel at that time is something that really helps manifest very quickly, in fact.
Yeah.
So, which is why scrolling is one of the worst things that you can do, because when you're scrolling just before bedtime, then the level of emotional volatility that you go through, because you're going from laughing at cat videos to awing at something else to crying about something else, like your mind is not equipped to deal with that many emotions in that shorter duration, and that's something that we do to ourselves just before sleep, which is
Yeah.
one of the most terrible things to do. I'm guilty of it too. But when I'm being intentional about manifestation, this is something I definitely adopt. I'll keep all my devices away. I'll in fact even cut the Wi-Fi off the room,
Wow.
and I'm just gonna hone in on the vision that I have for myself, the thing that I'm trying to manifest, whether it's a particular goal or whether it is just a state of mind. Sometimes even that can become a bit of a challenge, right? Just to be on my A game when it comes to my mood or my mental abilities for the day. I will just hone in on how I would like to feel, and I sleep kind of thinking that, and then I feel like it just expedites what I'm trying to manifest.
Well, that's something I've heard a lot about, trying to manifest right before you go to sleep, or in fact, right after you
wake
wake up also.
Yeah.
Because your brain is in the theta state, as they like to call it. Your brain waves are such that, it's the most in a place where it can be rewired most easily.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people practice their affirmations before going to sleep, almost like a
Yeah.
mantra.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people. I personally, for me, I meditate before going to sleep. If I am in a place where I'm trying to manifest a goal, I sometimes do my visualization before going to bed. I also look at my vision board sometimes before going to bed. I think it's just such a juicy, beautiful time, when everybody's gone to sleep. It's you with your little dreams and desires and hopes
Yeah.
and looking at your life and feeling excited about it, feeling
Yeah.
excited about the world that you're trying to build and the life that you're trying to create for yourself, and having that little hope deep inside of you that, hey, this is all going to come true, right?
Yeah.
I think that's just so fulfilling. And speaking about the belief that it's going to come true, I think a lot of people that I speak to about manifestation talk about their struggle with surrendering. And I want to double click on what you told me about this, that, you have this constant belief that you're divinely protected, right? And I think that is one of the most key things in manifestation as a process, or spirituality as a process, or just life, right? Having this belief that there is a higher power,
Yeah.
that there is a higher power that is looking out for you, that is watching out for you, and that is how you can surrender, only when you know there's something bigger than you. And I think that is why there was a point where I would actually actively not talk to people who were atheists, because I think that bothers me a lot when I see that someone cannot believe in a higher power. And
Yeah.
I think that's such a problem because you cannot see as anything above you. You have a problem accepting that there can be something bigger than you, right? You have such a big
Yeah.
ego.
Without really getting into much judgment here, I just feel like I did go through that process of critically evaluating whether or not I do believe in God. And I feel like that's also key because a lot of times people just believe in these beliefs because they were told to believe in it or because they come from a family that believed in it without really going through that process of critical thinking, which also I feel like is so important to know who you are and, just kind of have your own beliefs to look or have your own lens to look at the world
Yeah.
through, right? Like I feel like if you don't have that, you miss out on a lot of growth for your own self. And I know what I don't know. I kind of definitely am aware that there is a lot beyond what I can perceive or what humanity can perceive at this point in time. And I think the universe is way too vast to ever be completely
Understood.
digested, understood, completely scientifically
And I think
researched.
there's this little humility in this belief. Right? It
Yes.
keeps you small. It
It
keeps
keeps
you
you
in check.
small.
It's so important. I think when
Yeah.
you start equating yourself to the size of the universe is where the problem arises,
Yes.
right? So I think whether you believe in God or not as an external deity, I get that. You may not want to believe in like a god figure or a man god or something, but I think just knowing that there's a higher power, there's energies and forces in the universe at play that are bigger than you
Yeah.
is so important in order to feel safe. And because you're small,
Yes.
because you can't control everything, you are taken care of.
Yes, and even on the most pragmatic level, even if it's a placebo effect, it works.
It does.
When you're pushed to the wall, when you're in a crisis situation, having this faith and kind of leaning on a higher power, even if it is a delusion that you've made up, tides you through.
Yeah.
And it's God in the moment.
Yeah.
That's what you need.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, on that note, shall we end the episode on kind of giving it up to the listeners here?
Absolutely. I am so excited to know from our listeners
Yeah.
what are their struggles and challenges when it comes to manifesting things, and what are the different tools and techniques that they've used in order to manifest their biggest dreams, goals, and desires.
Yes, and I'm particularly excited to hear what our listeners use consciously to be intentional about their manifestations because we could all learn and grow from that.
Absolutely.
So, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Niharika.
And I'm Simran.
And we're signing off from the Girls, Who Think, the podcast.
Thank you.